After being rejected by his herd for having different skin, a young zebra with no stripes decides to cross the desert alone. He discovers that he is destined to save the entire herd. Today, we're going to recap the story of the movie Khumba from 2013. In the Karoo Desert, in an oasis surrounded by a tangle of thorns, lives a herd of zebras who have exclusive access to the only lake in the area. One day, when Lungisa is about to give birth, Nigel goes after SEO and tells him that his son will be born soon. Approaching his wife, Lungisa is relieved to hear that the baby has been born healthy, and all the other zebras gather around Lungisa to meet the new member of the family. However, when they realize that only half of Khumba's body is striped, everyone is horrified and starts making fun of him, except his parents, who consider the little guy to be perfect just the way he is. From the day Khumba was born, the rain clouds disappeared, and as time went by, the lake began to dry up. Despite being the laughingstock of other kids his age, Khumba becomes best friends with Tommy, who considers him special because he's different. However, Toma doesn't approve of her sister's friendship with that weirdo and doesn't miss any opportunity to tease him. Seeing his son in trouble, SEO wants to go and defend him, but Lungisa, who is very ill, asks her husband not to do so, as Khumba needs to learn to protect himself. That day, while walking alone in the oasis, the young animal meets a praying mantis, and the insect draws him a map in the sand. Then, Tommy shows up to see if his friend is okay, but Khumba considers himself responsible for causing the drought, so he believes he deserves to be excluded by the others. Unlike all the other members of their gang, Tommy doesn't think it's possible that a single zebra could make all the water in the oasis disappear. But her opinion isn't enough to console Khumba. When he leaves, the young animal approaches the fence and comes across some oryx asking for help because the old animal in his herd is ill and needs water. In order to help them, the zebra decides to open a passage and allow the animals to cross the fence. In doing so, Khumba comes across a large herd and is surprised to discover that there is a whole world to be explored on the other side of those thorns. When they notice the presence of intruders in the oasis, the whole herd gathers to form a barrier and prevent them from approaching the lake. So the oryx decide to leave, and as they are crossing the fence, a hungry leopard appears. While attacking the antelopes, the feline smells the young zebra and walks towards it. Immediately, Khumba tries to lower the branch and gets his father's help to close the fence. Furious, Pango sends word to Macula, the leader of the pack, that he can't keep the zebras hidden for long. If it doesn't rain soon, the zebras will have to go out to look for water and food, so Pango will be there waiting for them. After the scare, Khumba goes to visit his mother and brings her some food. Knowing that Lungisa is not in good health, he realizes that her son is upset. She decides to reveal to him the meaning of his name. According to legend, the first zebras to exist on Earth had completely white skin and no stripes. One day, a young zebra went on a journey through the vast Karoo Desert, and at the bottom of a huge mountain, he found a magic lake. This young animal then decided to swim in the lake, and when he came out of the water, his body was covered in stripes. He was proud that his skin was different from the others. But when the rest of the herd saw his stripes, they all decided to jump into the lake and look like each other. Lungisa tells this story to show her son what a privilege it is to be different. But upon hearing the legend, Khumba understands otherwise and decides to go in search of this lake. He immediately runs to look at the map drawn by the praying mantis and comes to the conclusion that the insect was trying to show him the way to the magic lake. Hours later, Khumba sees all the zebras gathering around his mother and discovers that she is eliminated. Seeing the suffering of his father and the rest of the gang, the young animal feels even more encouraged to set off on his journey, hoping that if he gets stripes, the rain clouds will return. When he crosses to the other side of the fence, Khumba comes across an African wild dog, and Skull says he can take him to the magic lake. After a few minutes of walking, the pair comes across Mam V and Bradley. Just then, other wild dogs appear and decide to devour Power, the zebra. Scout's initial idea was to use Khumba as a bargaining chip to get water from the zebra shelter. But when he realizes that his friends have banded together to attack Khumba, the dog joins the rest of the pack and surrounds the animal. However, Mam V decides to protect him and attacks all the predators that try to get close to him. Thanks to her enormous size, the wildebeest manages to get rid of the dogs and takes revenge on Skull for luring Khumba into a trap. When he discovers that the zebra is on his way to a lake, Mam and Bradley decide to accompany him, and the three of them follow the clues left by the praying mantis. That night, SEO is desperately looking for his son when Tommy finds the map drawn in the sand and discovers that his friend is gone. She immediately decides to go out to look for him, but SEO asks her to stay there to look after the gang while he goes out to find the animal. Skull is gathered with his gang at dawn when Pango appears to devour him. In an attempt to get out of the situation alive, the dog tells him that there is a young zebra walking in the desert and shows him the way they went. During the walk, Bradley starts to get scared of Pango showing up, and when Khumba asks who this guy is, the ostrich reveals that he is a leopard with supernatural powers. When it starts to get cold, the trio decides to take a break, and Bradley tells the story of how he ended up in the desert. The ostrich used to live on a farm but ran away to get his freedom. Mam V, on the other hand, doesn't like to talk about her past and decides to leave it buried. Meanwhile, Skull takes Pango to the last place he saw the zebra, and the leopard decides to follow Khumba's trail alone. Hours later, Pango shows up and sees the feline's footprints mixed in with his son's and comes to the conclusion that Khumba has been eliminated. Saddened by the cub's perishment, he returns to the oasis and breaks the sad news to everyone. But Tommy can't believe that her best friend is gone. In the morning, the trio takes a break to eat before continuing their journey. Khumba spots the 3 mountains that were drawn on the Manus' map. At that moment, their hope is renewed, and they gather energy to make another long walk. Suddenly, a herd of antelopes approaches at high speed, and they try to escape, but they can't get through the fence. Luckily, the impalas stop their run before running over the 3 friends and decide to help them through the wire fence. The herd then continues on its way while Khumba and his new friends continue in the direction of the 3 mountains. Even after the young animal's disappearance, the rain doesn't reach the oasis, and a few days later, the zebras start fighting each other over the water. However, the herd is afraid to leave as they all believe they will suffer the same fate as Khumba. After facing a long journey, the trio finally receives their well-deserved reward and manages to reach a lake. However, after his first dive, Khumba is frustrated because his stripes haven't appeared. Suddenly, a small group of animals from different species approaches and welcomes the new residents of the Ing Animal Sanctuary, where South Africa's most varied species take refuge. The problem is that this is not a natural sanctuary, but a shelter built by humans where the animals are mere attractions. Upon discovering the truth, Khumba decides to continue his journey in search of the real Magic Lake. But Mam and Bradley reveal that they won't be accompanying him because now they've finally found a place where they're safe from Pango. When the humans show up, they try to throw tranquilizer darts at the zebra, but it's Bradley who ends up getting hit and faints. Realizing that he is being hunted by these people, Khumba flees and is pursued by the vehicles. At that moment, Mam picks Bradley up, and they both go to meet their friend who is in serious trouble. Khumba tries to escape in every possible way but ends up being surrounded and captured by a truck. Determined to save the young zebra, Rabbit jumps to the windshield of the truck and causes an accident. When the vehicle overturns, Khumba manages to escape, and the rabbit reveals that only one animal knows the way to the magical lake. The creature advises the zebra to climb the mountain and look for the black eagle. After everything that has happened, Mam decides to leave with Khumba and takes the ostrich with him. While climbing the mountain of rocks, Bradley almost falls, and Khumba asks his friends to wait there while he goes to find the eagle. However, the ostrich decides to continue climbing with him, and Mam V has to stay behind alone as her body is too big to pass between the rocks. When the pair finally reaches the top, they come across a group of rodents who begin a ritual to get rid of the invaders. Discovering that they are looking for the black eagle, the creatures capture Bradley and push him off the cliff. Luckily, the ostrich gets stuck on a branch and manages to survive as its wings don't allow it to fly. Suddenly, the black eagle appears, and all the rodents hide to avoid being captured by the predator. The eagle orders Khumba to climb into his nest to find him immediately. The creature attacks the young zebra and asks why the animal has come there. However, when it finds out that Khumba wants its help to get his stripes, the bird orders him to leave. Saki is an albino black eagle and knows very well what it's like to feel different from all the other individuals of his species. So when Khumba asks how to get to the magic lake, the bird decides to point the way and reveals that the place the zebra is looking for is called Nile Mountain. To get there, Khumba will have to pass through the Valley of Desolation and then the abandoned farm. Finally, the zebra will have to go around a salt pan to find Pinot's cave. The leopard, who was born blind in one eye, was excluded from his pack and abandoned by his own kind when he was still a cub. What no one imagined was that blindness would give him a better sense of smell than any other feline, and when he grew up, Pango became a great hunter. After getting revenge on his family, he turned into a bitter creature who continues to harm other animals for pleasure. After meeting Khumba, Rabbit felt encouraged to leave the animal sanctuary and fight for his freedom. Inspired by the rabbit, the other creatures in the shelter decide to follow him, and the group also sets off in search of the magical lake. That day, SEO goes to talk to Tabo, Tommy's father, and asks for his help in finding a new refuge for the herd. Because if they stay there, they will all perish of thirst. The herd then unites to walk into the unknown, since most of those zebras have never left the oasis before. Just before nightfall, Khumba and his friends arrive in the Valley of Desolation, and after crossing it, find an abandoned farm where they decide to stop and rest. They are about to drink the water from a fountain when a sheep dressed as a wild sheep comes out of the house and starts chasing them with its fake horns. During his escape, one of Khumba's paws gets stuck in the wooden floor, and he falls to the ground. At this point, the zebra asks her friends to run to the mountain while she distracts the crazy sheep. But instead of fleeing, Mamvi and Bradley stay to help their friend trap the animal and discover that they are on their way to Pinot's lair. Knowing that his friends would not accompany him on this trip if they knew that the lake was in the leopard's cave, Khumba decided to hide this information. Now, Mama V and Bradley no longer trust him. At this point, the wildebeest begins to cry as she remembers the punishment of her baby, which was devoured by Pango. Ashamed, Khumba decides to continue his journey alone and leaves the pair behind. Hours later, Mam and Bradley decide to go in the opposite direction and end up being found by the leopard. Pango chases them through the desert and manages to surround them. The feline is looking for Khumba and asks where he is gone. So, in order not to be devoured, the ostrich reveals that his friend is on his way to Nile Mountain. Immediately, Pango goes after him, and Mambi says that they must find Khumba before he is devoured. After a long journey without drinking or eating, the young zebra faints. When he wakes up, he sees his mother walking across the salt flats to meet him. However, the truth is that this is not his mother, but the old animal he led into the oasis to drink water. After feeding him, Janie asks the young animal to accompany her and takes him to a safe place. After a few days of walking, the zebras come across some clouds and are relieved to learn that a storm is approaching. At this point, the gang comes across a rabbit and the other animals from the sanctuary and discovers that they are on their way to meet Khumba. Upon hearing this, SEO is surprised to learn that his son is alive and asks the whole herd to follow the rabbit as he runs to Nile Mountain. With Jan's help, Khumba manages to reach his destination. But before he can enter the cave, a bolt of lightning sets fire to a bush right in front of him. He has to walk through the fire. As the zebras wander around the abandoned farm, they end up being spotted by the impalas, who decide to follow them. Skull is also on his way to the mountain, and upon seeing the sheep trapped in the paddock, he decides to free it. However, the creature is afraid of being devoured. Then, the wild dog reveals that he is split from his pack and now wants to live in peace with all the animals. It's getting dark when SEO manages to overtake Mam V and Bradley, and the pair wonders who that zebra is that's running at high speed towards the mountain. Arriving at the cave, Khumba sees some drawings on the wall and soon realizes that he has found the right place. The zebra then crosses a small passage in search of the lake. Its father tries to go after them, but his body is too big to cross, so the wildebeest uses its horns to try and break the rock. At that moment, the herd and the other animals on their way up the mountain are stopped by the flames. Tommy is distraught at not being able to get to her friend. Finally, after weeks of searching the desert for Khumba, Pango manages to find him and remains hidden in the darkness, waiting for the right moment to attack the young zebra. While walking through the cave, Khumba comes across the magical lake and feels that all his efforts to cross the Karoo Desert have paid off. Then, when the cub is about to enter the water to get his reward, he realizes that he doesn't want to be like all the zebras and comes to the conclusion that the color of his coat is something that makes him unique. Just then, Pango appears and tells him about the prophecy that says a zebra with only half of its body striped will be born and make one of the leopards the most powerful animal in the desert. So, Pango eliminated all the members of his clan not to risk losing the chance to make this prophecy come true. Realizing that he is about to be devoured, Khumba immediately runs away and is chased by the shepherd. While running at high speed, the shepherd ends up slipping and knocking down numerous rocks that were supporting the cave. At this point, Pango ends up falling to the ground, but he doesn't give up his hunt and uses his keen sense of smell to locate the zebra's hiding place. Once again, Khumba manages to escape and runs towards the magic lake to try to escape. But Pango jumps on top of him, and they both fall into the water. While the zebra is fighting for his own survival, the cave begins to collapse, and he manages to escape the clutches of the feline, who is paralyzed by a memory from his childhood. It's the first time Pango has been in that lake since the day his mother pushed him in, and he almost drowned. Khumba takes advantage of the predator's distraction to escape, but when he reaches the surface, the leopard appears and pulls him back into the water. However, they both have to separate when they are almost crushed by a gigantic rock, and suddenly the rocks that make up the cave begin to crack. At that moment, SEO, Ma'am, and Bradley have to run to avoid being crushed, and they all witness a waterfall being formed with the water from the lake. Suddenly, Pango and appear, and both slip on the rocks. Seeing his son being chased by the leopard, SEO becomes desperate, and all the other zebras in the herd begin to hope for the animal's survival. During his escape, Khumba spots a rock about to fall off the cliff and jumps onto it. When Pango goes after him, the rock can't support the weight of his body, and the feline ends up being crushed. To avoid suffering the same fate as his enemy, the young animal decides to jump into the water, and all his friends rush to the lake to rescue him. When SEO approaches his son, he sees Tommy next to him, and everyone comes to the conclusion that Khumba is eliminated. Just then, for the first time in years, it starts to rain, and at the same time, another miracle happens. Khumba starts breathing again, relieving everyone. They celebrate the young man's life, and Tommy runs to hug him. From that day on, the different species lived together in perfect harmony in the new oasis that had been formed. Khumba finally began to be seen in a positive light by the other zebras who had despised him. After all this traveling, this group of survivors discovers that the differences between them are precisely what make them stronger. So, what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. If you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.